Welcome to the TBC podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more audiobooks. Today we're diving deep into the life of Jimmy Carter. Now, most people remember him as the 39th president, but his story goes, it goes way beyond those 4 years in the White House. Imagine, it's 1924. The world's still recovering from a world war. And in a small town, Plains, Georgia, a baby boy is born. James Earl Carter Jr., you probably know him better as Jimmy. Plains was a world away from the hustle and bustle of the big city. Life revolved around agriculture, and that's where Jimmy learned the values of hard work, faith, and community. It's fascinating. Even though he grew up in the segregated South, Jimmy formed close bonds with the children of black farmhands. These early experiences, they really shaped his worldview and his commitment to racial equality now. Jimmy wasn't just a farm boy. He had a sharp mind, excelled in school. He set his sights on the prestigious United States Naval Academy. Talk about a leap from rural Georgia to the world of submarines and nuclear technology. This wasn't just a career choice for him, it was a formative experience.
Serving in the Navy, especially during the development of the nuclear submarine program, it instilled in him a deep understanding of technology, military strategy, global affairs, skills that would later be invaluable in his political career. But even as he was navigating the complexities of naval life, his heart remained in Plains. When his father passed away in 1953, Jimmy made a tough choice. He left the Navy and returned home to take over the family peanut farm. This wasn't a walk in the park. The farm was struggling. But Jimmy, ever the problem solver, embraced scientific farming methods, studied diligently, and even brought his wife Rosalind on board to manage the finances. Together, they turned the farm around, proving that Jimmy's success wasn't limited to submarines and high-tech gadgets. This period also marked the awakening of his political aspirations. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum. And Jimmy, who had witnessed racial injustices firsthand, he couldn't stay silent. He started speaking out against segregation, advocating for integration, and he even served on his local school board, trying to make a difference right there in Plains. Then in 1962, he made a bold move. He ran for a seat in the Georgia State Senate. It was a tight race, marred by voting irregularities. But Jimmy didn't back down. He challenged the results, exposed the fraud, and ultimately secured his victory. This showed a tenacity and a commitment to fairness. That would define his political career. As a state senator, Jimmy found himself at the heart of the civil rights struggle. He saw the resistance to change, the deep-seated prejudices. But he remained steadfast in his belief in equality and justice. He challenged literacy tests that were used to disenfranchise black voters, opposed amendments that hinted at religious coercion, and pushed for modernizing the Democratic Party's rules. His work wasn't just about lofty ideals. He also focused on practical matters. He chaired the West Central Georgia Planning and Development Commission, overseeing the allocation of funds for crucial projects, including the restoration of historic sites. But Jimmy's ambition didn't stop at the state level. In 1966, he set his sights even higher. He ran for governor of Georgia. This was a highly contested race against two strong opponents, a liberal former governor and a staunch segregationist. Jimmy tried to position himself as a moderate, appealing to a broad spectrum of voters. But despite his efforts, he lost the primary. Now, some might have seen this as a major setback, but not Jimmy. He went back to his business, regrouped, and planned his next move. This period also marked a significant personal transformation. He rededicated himself to his Christian faith, declaring himself a born-again Christian. And amidst these personal and professional shifts, his youngest child, Amy, was born. In 1970, Jimmy launched another bid for the governorship, and this time, he emerged victorious. His victory speech shocked many as he boldly declared that the time for racial discrimination is over. Imagine the impact of those words. Spoken by a Southern governor in the heart of the Deep South, he backed up his words with actions. He integrated black employees into the state government and placed portraits of prominent black Georgians in the Capitol building, a symbolic gesture that spoke volumes. He also streamlined the state government, merging hundreds of agencies to increase efficiency, and while he remained committed to integration, he also tried to appease those wary of change by supporting a ban on busing for school integration, a controversial issue that revealed the complexities of navigating racial politics. But as governor, Jimmy's eyes were already on a bigger prize, the presidency. He engaged in national politics, serving on committees and attending the Democratic National Convention in 1972. There, he tried to position himself as a conservative alternative to the likely nominee, Senator George McGovern. He was appealing to those wary of McGovern's liberal policies. But his efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. The Democratic ticket that year faced a landslide defeat. But Jimmy Carter, undeterred, walked away with his sights firmly set on the 1976 presidential election. He had challenged the status quo, championed progressive causes, and now he's ready to take his message of hope and change to the entire nation. So as we rejoin Jimmy Carter's journey, It's 1976, and the United States is at a crossroads. The Watergate scandal, it had left the nation disillusioned with politics. The economy was sputtering, and there was a sense of uncertainty in the air. And it's into this climate that Jimmy Carter steps forward. A peanut farmer from Georgia, promising honesty, integrity, and a fresh start. Now, you might think, a peanut farmer for president. But that's exactly what resonated with voters. Carter was the quintessential outsider, untouched by the Washington establishment, a man who spoke plainly and connected with everyday Americans. He campaigned on grassroots organizing, shaking hands, and truly listening to people's concerns. He tapped into this deep longing for change, a yearning for a leader who felt more like a neighbor than a distant figurehead. And it worked. Carter surprised the political pundits by winning the Democratic nomination, and then went on to face incumbent President Gerald Ford in a nail-biting election. And when the dust settled, Carter emerged victorious, becoming the 39th president of the United States. But winning the presidency is one thing, governing is quite another. Carter inherited a stack of challenges, a stagnant economy plagued by inflation, simmering international tensions, and the lingering shadow of the Vietnam War. He was determined to tackle these issues head-on, bringing his pragmatic problem-solving approach to the Oval Office. One of his first acts as president was to fulfill a campaign promise by granting amnesty to Vietnam War draft evaders. Now, this was a bold move, a controversial decision that underscored his belief in moving past the divisions of the war and allowing the nation to heal. On the economic front, Carter faced a unique challenge, what economists called stagflation, this toxic combination of stagnant economic growth and high inflation. He responded by implementing a national energy policy aimed at decreasing dependence on foreign oil. This involved promoting conservation, investing in alternative energy sources, and even creating a brand new cabinet-level department, the Department of Energy, to focus specifically on energy issues. He also recognized the power of education, creating the Department of Education, to expand educational opportunities and empower all Americans. He believed that education was the key to unlocking individual potential and a stronger nation. But Carter's presidency wasn't just about domestic policies. He faced a series of foreign policy challenges that tested his leadership on the world stage. Perhaps the most defining and ultimately the most agonizing was the Iran hostage crisis. In 1979, Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. This crisis dragged on for 444 days, casting a long shadow over Carter's presidency. He tried everything to secure the hostages' release: diplomacy, economic sanctions, even a daring military rescue mission that tragically ended in failure. The hostage crisis became a symbol of American impotence, eroding public confidence in Carter's leadership. But it's important to remember that amidst these setbacks, Carter also achieved significant foreign policy successes. He played a pivotal role in brokering the historic Camp David Accords, a peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. This wasn't just a handshake agreement. It was a complex and delicate negotiation that required immense diplomatic skill and a willingness to take risks. Think about it, bringing together two nations that have been locked in conflict for decades and forging a path towards peace. That's a remarkable achievement. Carter also signed the Panama Canal Treaties, transferring control of the Panama Canal to Panama. This was long overdue recognition of Panamanian sovereignty, a step towards righting a historical wrong and strengthening relations between the two countries. On the global stage, Carter made human rights and democracy cornerstones of his foreign policy. He believed that America had a moral obligation to stand up for the oppressed and promote freedom around the world. This commitment to principle sometimes put him at odds with the realpolitik of the Cold War, leading him to condemn human rights abuses by both the Soviet Union and U.S. allies. This unwavering stance, while admirable, sometimes alienated those who favored a more pragmatic approach. By 1980, the combined weight of the hostage crisis, a struggling economy, and a general sense of national malaise had taken their toll on Carter's popularity. He faced a formidable opponent in Ronald Reagan, who campaigned on a message of strength and optimism, offering a stark contrast to Carter's perceived weakness and pessimism. The election resulted in a landslide victory for Reagan, marking the end of Carter's presidency after a single term. Now, you might think that leaving office under such circumstances would be a crushing defeat, the final chapter in a political career. But for Jimmy Carter, it was just the beginning of an extraordinary second act. He took the concept of post-presidency and transformed it, turning what could have been a quiet retirement into a dynamic platform for global change. He showed the world that true leadership doesn't end when you leave office. In fact, it might just be getting started. Leaving the White House after just one term might feel like a political setback. But for Jimmy Carter, it was the launchpad for something truly remarkable. This wasn't a man content to fade into the background. He had this, This deep well of compassion, this relentless drive to make a difference, a belief that his service to humanity, well, it didn't end with the presidency. You see, Carter redefined what it meant to be a former president. He didn't retreat from public life. He embraced it, becoming this global advocate for peace, human rights, and democracy. He showed the world that true leadership, it transcends the boundaries of elected office. In 1982, him and Rosalind, his steadfast partner, they established the Carter Center. And this wasn't just another think tank. It was a hands-on organization dedicated to tackling some of the world's toughest challenges. They focused on everything from election monitoring and conflict resolution to fighting diseases and promoting economic development. Think about this. Carter and Rosalind traveled the world, going to places many wouldn't dare, meeting with world leaders, grassroots activists, and everyday people caught in the crossfire of conflict. They rolled up their sleeves and got to work, demonstrating that even seemingly intractable problems, well, they could be addressed with sustained effort and global cooperation. One of Carter's core beliefs was that free and fair elections were the bedrock of democracy. He saw them as essential for peaceful transitions of power and holding leaders accountable. The Carter Center, under his guidance, it became this leading international observer of elections. They deployed teams all over the globe to monitor voting processes and ensure transparency, helping to safeguard democracy in fledgling nations and shining a light on electoral malpractice. But Carter wasn't just about monitoring elections. He was actively involved in conflict resolution. He stepped in as a mediator, working tirelessly to bring warring factions to the negotiating table. He wasn't afraid to engage with those considered pariahs by the international community, believing that dialogue, however difficult, was always preferable to violence. His efforts extended to health and disease eradication as well. The Carter Center spearheaded initiatives to combat guinea worm disease, river blindness, and other neglected tropical diseases that ravaged millions in the developing world. These programs weren't just about medical intervention. They were about empowering communities and improving lives. Through it all, Carter never wavered in his commitment to human rights. He was a vocal critic of oppression, a champion of the disenfranchised, and he challenged leaders who abused their power. He was particularly outspoken on the issue of Palestinian rights, arguing passionately for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, this stance earned him both admiration and criticism. Some applauded his courage in speaking truth to power, while others accused him of bias against Israel. But Carter remained unwavering in his belief that lasting peace could only be achieved through a just and equitable solution that recognized the rights of both Israelis and Palestinians. In 2002, all of his efforts culminated in the ultimate recognition, the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Committee acknowledged his untiring effort to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts, to advance democracy and human rights, and to promote economic and social development. This award wasn't just for his achievements as president, it was for his extraordinary work in the decades that followed, his unwavering dedication to making the world a better place. Jimmy Carter's post-presidency stands as a shining example of what's possible. When a leader transcends the limitations of political office, he demonstrated that public service doesn't end with leaving office. It can be a lifelong commitment to creating a more just and compassionate world. And there you have it, a glimpse into the truly remarkable life of Jimmy Carter, from peanut fields to the White House, and then on to becoming a global champion for peace and human rights. His journey is a testament to the power of one person to make a difference. It makes you think, doesn't it? How much do our early experiences shape the course of our lives? And how do we define the true legacy of a leader? Is it measured by time in office or by the impact they have on the world? These are questions worth pondering as you go about your day. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the life of Jimmy Carter.